Hi, and welcome back to No Cabin Fever today. With us today, we have Christian Reichert from Resolution, and he will tell us a little bit how to hire the right people and how to not, and what the not is. That will Christian enlighten us with, I guess. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Christian.
Hey guys, and thank you for this. So let me quickly share my screen so that you can see my PowerPoint. There we go. All right, so what the hell do I know about hiring then? Well, I work for Resolution, CEO of Resolution and the co-founder of it. And Resolution is about 25 people now. So that has grown in an Atlassian marketplace vendor from essentially 2 people when we started to 25 now. So we had to add some people there, and we nowadays provide the #1 single sign-on app for Atlassian Server and Data Center, and quite a few other products as well. So we've certainly haven't hit the peak there yet. But even in my previous life, I was working for Westcon Group, heading up their services division in EMEA, and that was about 350 people, engineers, sales, back office staff, trainers across many countries in EMEA. And before that, in 2006, I started a company called Intact, and that ended up being 90 people in Germany. And in Intact, we participated in Great Place to Work for the first time in 2013. And that year and the following year, we've certainly got placed in one of the best places to work. So I certainly hope that I know a little bit about how to hire the right people for your business. At least I think my track record is generally a bit more than 50%. And that is actually what I would consider a good track record. And it might shock some of you already. But I think hiring the right people is not that easy. But let's start me off with something. So this has nothing to do with hiring, but it's one talk that I would really highly recommend to you. It's from Simon Sinek, How Great Leaders Inspire Action. Look at that talk, and the particular message in there is start with why. Yeah, and starting with why makes all the difference. And I'll tell you in a second what that has to do with hiring people as well. So to give you an example, he uses the Apple example. So he says essentially, most people start with what they do, then maybe they're going to tell you how they do it. Very few people ever tell you why. So an Apple pitch could be, we make great computers. They're beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. Want to buy one? So that really starts with what they do, making great computers, how they do it, and it never touches the why. But if you've ever seen a Apple commercial, that's not quite how they sound, is it? So the example for the other way around would be, everything we do, we believe in challenging, in thinking differently. The way we challenge the status quo is by making our products beautifully designed, simple to use, and user-friendly. And we happen to make great computers. Want to buy one? So that sounds very different, and it's usually a lot more emotionally connected with people because you start with why they are doing something, and then go to the how and what. And that's even, I think, an important thing to think of for all the people you have. I think as a company, you should really know why you're doing something, the things that you do. And I would even break it down to more the individuals. They should understand why they do the job they do and how it impacts the whole enterprise, the whole product, all the other divisions, etc. So, and too often we're starting with what is the job, maybe a little bit into the how, and hardly ever go into the why. But I've seen over the years that people are most motivated when they understand why they're doing something, and also when they see how they can contribute to the bigger picture. So that's something I'd like to, which is not strictly about hiring great people. That's something, watch a TED Talk if you have a minute, Simon Sinek, and I'm pretty sure the colleagues are gonna link it in the show notes as well. So that's, if you don't take anything out of this conversation other than that, I think it was 10 minutes worth spent well on watching that TED Talk. But let's go to the hiring stuff a bit more precisely. So first of all, we have to find a candidate. And I would usually say, try to find that candidate early, which also means be a little bit optimistic. So if you meet someone that you think would be a great candidate and you're maybe still 2-3 months away from when you would start looking for someone, make sure you can make it happen. Hire that person if you need it and make the best out of it. Show a little bit of flexibility. But how do you find a candidate in the first place? My best experience is around use your network. For example, the people you know on LinkedIn, friends you might have, business partners you have. If you know you start looking for someone in 2-3 months down the line, then ask them for help. Because people who are coming in with recommendations, they're worth a lot more than people who come in via recruiters generally. Yeah, use your employees. So we pay a finder's fee of 3,000 euros to every employee who found another one after they've been with us for 12 months. And most of our dev team growth in Germany, for example, came in that way by some developers knowing other developers. Actually, if I think a bit more, I think we only had to recruit 3 or 4 people really externally. And everyone else came in via that network effect. And that has a couple of benefits. It's cheaper than using a recruiter. So if you just want a financial result, it's cheaper. Yeah, fantastic. But even more than that, the people who recommend, if your people really like you as an employer or you as a boss or you as a team lead, they really think twice about recommending someone they don't know or where they think, that's not maybe a great friend, but I would not really work with them. Yeah. So generally the people, when they recommend someone, it's someone that has a good chance to work out well. Yeah. And that's also the person who recommended that other person. He usually feels somewhat responsible and is a little bit of a natural mentor to make sure that person doesn't fail when he onboards it. The other thing I can recommend is be clever. Yeah, think of especially if you're like us, a small company, use some of the things that are easy for you to do and might be valuable for others. I'll give you an example of what we did in Westcon to a degree. We had a training division doing trainings on firewalls, on a lot of security products. And we had spare seats, yeah? So every training room was maybe 20 people. But when you hold the training and there are only 15 people who signed up for it then and there, it means you're wasting 5 seats, which would not really have cost you much incremental cost. So we started to give them away to university professors, to other people, have something as a giveaway for some of their best students or people who achieved something. Things like that. Yeah, it didn't cost us much, but it was something where other people would have paid 4,000 or 5,000 euros for. If you have things like that, then be clever with it. Use it as a recruiting tool. Yeah, especially if you're smaller and maybe not the biggest company who can afford a huge recruiting budget. So if none of that worked for you so far, then the other thing that I would recommend is build a relationship with a recruiter. Yeah, I prefer people working on an hourly rate because the people who work on a sort of success rate, 20%, 25, 30% of salary, that's not just expensive, but they actually, if you think about it, you pay them to bring you the candidate asking for the highest money. Yeah, because their share, if you pay them 50,000, their share is more than if you pay them 40,000. Yeah, so they are not necessarily incentivized to bring you the best candidate. They're incentivized a little bit more to bring you the most expensive candidate that you'll hire. So also, that's why I prefer more the paying them by the hourly rate. And also, ideally, someone who gets to know your company, who know what kind of people you're looking for, what kind of mentality you have, what kind of culture you have in your company, that he can choose the right people. And that's maybe something to realize as well. Not every great person is a good hire for you, yeah, and vice versa. So as a company, as a team, you should look for the people who fit your culture, who fit the company you currently are and can get you to where you want to be, rather than trying to hire people who would be a great fit for the company you would love to be. But if you're a lot more chaotic than that, you might get unhappy people if they think they found a very structured or very set job. Yeah. Think about hiring a part-time recruiter, and also don't do the mistake that I see a lot of big companies do. Don't just let recruiters manage agencies that do the recruiting. You just pay double. Yeah, if you hired a recruiter, then the recruiter should do the recruiting and find you the candidates. They shouldn't find you good agencies where you have to spend 20 or 30% of the salary afterwards. But hey, let's go to the next step. Let's say we've got something. So someone or a couple of CVs to select, and then some interviews to do. One thing I can only recommend is allow enough time to really get a good picture. So make that, I'm not necessarily a big fan of getting candidates in 5 times on 5 different days. I think if they're good, they're gone before you finish your interviewing process. I mean much more, get them in for 3-4 hours, have a couple of people interview them, some as a team, some individually, but you get multiple impressions. So that's the other thing. Hiring, I think, is a team effort, not just a you effort. Then for me, it's much more important to get someone who's got the right attitude, the right team fit, and is passionate about what he's going to do. Much more important than skills. Skills is a function of what I'm willing to pay that person, and it's a thing of how long does it take me to teach them the skills. But so I don't do shortcuts on attitude, team fit, and passion. I sometimes do a lot of compromises on skills if I fundamentally believe the person has the talent or the capability to learn them. Also, don't hire people who tell your customers bullshit. So if that person, if you ask him to do a technical explanation, if he tells you, I don't know, that is a fair answer. Yeah, if he tells you, well, this is what I know, but I'm not sure, and that's how I would look it up, that's a fair answer. If he tells you bullshit, then really think twice if you want to have that person in front of your customers, selling your product or explaining a function and telling your customer some totally stupid thing that someone else has to end up fixing. Yeah. Also, I'm personally a big fan of open-ended questions. And open-ended questions, for example, are, tell me about your relationship with your supervisor, or what are important qualities for you that you're looking for in a boss or in a company, etc. Something that's not just a yes and no answer, that people really need to speak a little bit, and they very much help you peel a little bit deeper. And what you'll see is that on the typical interview questions, a lot of people are tend to be a little bit prepared. But if you have an open-ended question like, tell me about your relationship with your supervisor, you get an answer. And then you follow up with another open-ended question. So how did it make you feel? Or how did you fix that situation? Or in what they answered. If you go like 2 or 3 steps deeper than that, you start to see the real person, because that's not prepared. You start to get real answers in how they feel, how they deal, and that stuff. And that's really what I want to see in an interview is I want to see the real person, and that person also gets to see the real company, the real us, because it's not that they should see what they get themselves into, and vice versa. So we're not trying to portray a picture that we're not when we're hiring people. So the better you can do this interview, the more serious you take it, the more you improve your chances to hiring the right person in the first place. Yeah, which brings me, and I'm running, starting to run low on time, sort of to one of the last slides, which is the other thing. Use the probation period. Yeah, so it's there for a reason. Give them a real chance. Yeah, which means you should also provide them feedback in how they are doing. Do that often, and don't collect stuff too long. Yeah, if you address something that is not working very well, and hey, I didn't like this. This is what I would have expected. Do it better next time. Then it's a small thing that you're addressing. You reduce the amount, since it's a specific example. You reduce the risk of that person going into defense mode, and oh no. And you don't necessarily get upset or in a bad mood. So if you collect 15 examples of that person doing something wrong over the last 4 weeks, and you make one review meeting and bang that person with those 15 things, and even worse, you make it, you never do this, you never, so, and then they only need one example where they did it right, and they can rightfully think you are wrong. That's not helpful, yeah? And that's the other thing is, don't avoid those difficult conversations. Addressing something that wasn't great might not be a pleasant conversation, or might not be a conversation you enjoy. But if you go ahead, have them more frequently, and also show people what success looks like, then they are getting much easier, and they're much better than collecting that for a long time. And there's nothing worse than at the end of 6 months of the probation period that you go to someone and you have to tell them they didn't pass it, and they're totally surprised because they thought they're doing great. Yeah, that's really not fun, and that's really not fair to the people you're hiring either, and it's nothing you should enjoy. So having those conversations a long time, especially if people don't work out as you would expect them, is very important. And the last point here is, don't keep the wrong people. Just don't. Yeah, I'm looking back of being 22 years in business, and I can count you a lot of things that I did wrong, but I can also tell you every single time where I ended up keeping someone who I knew was the wrong person, I regretted it in the end, regardless how good the reason was at the time. If it was, we can't let the customer go, or it's better to have it than not to have it, whatever the reasoning was, yeah, it didn't matter. I was wrong. Yeah, so don't keep the wrong people. If you see they don't fit, then solve the problem. If they're in the probation, let them go. If they're after the probation, have a good conversation with them to send them on another path, but don't keep the wrong people. Yeah. And one thing I found very useful, once you start delegating hiring responsibilities, so that you don't do the hiring all yourself, but you have to delegate it to other people. And if they're good people, then it's hard for them to make people fail the probation, or one of the small tips I can give you in that case is what we did in Intect initially. We made failing the probation the default. So I told every manager who was hiring other people, if you can't stand after 6 months in front of me and make a glowing review for that person, that you're absolutely convinced that is the right person to keep in your team, and he's really going to help you build a great team, then I'm going to go to that person and tell him he failed his probation. Yeah. So making failing the probation a default really helps those newer managers that are starting to make those experiences I'm trying to share with you today. Really helps them greatly. And it's much harder, if they respect you, to stand in front of you and make a glowing case for someone they don't believe in, then if their choice is, do I give him another couple of months and maybe he's going to work out or not? So if you want to make this, don't keep the wrong people happen in your company, making failing the probation a default is a good step in between. Once those guys have a lot more experience and those things, then that's no longer needed. But if you start delegating that responsibility, it's a great start. So, and last but not least, things are not over in after probation or after decision. So try to teach and onboard people well. So not just on your products, not just the processes, tell them also what the culture is, how you expect them to communicate, what your tone is with customers, what your tone is internally, especially if they're non-native speakers like we have very much. There's some good tools around them, and try to give them a mentor where they can feel safe and can ask questions, and people they can learn from and respect. And once you do that, it really, really pays off. So I know I might have taken a little bit longer than your usual 15-minute slot. I still hope it was useful to you. So if you have any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. My email is on the screen, then just get in touch. And Daniel, back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Christian. I was following along as well, and basically all of the things that you mentioned, they're super helpful. The only thing that I'd like to add, there is one book from an ex-Google manager called Radical Candor. You had this somewhere mentioned on your slide about providing honest, even if it's difficult, but providing honest feedback as soon as possible. Just not to keep anyone blindsided during probation periods or anything. So that was a good read and very eye-opening for me as well. Yeah. So right now I don't see any questions in the Q&A box. If there's anything coming in, we'll give you a few more seconds. Otherwise, I'd like to thank you very much, Christian, for being a steady contributor to No Cabin Fever today.
Thank you.
And it's always, yeah, I always enjoy following your talks. So I hope the audience goes with this as well.
Is that your hidden way to tell me I should submit another one?
Well, if you'd like to, no. But yeah, otherwise, if there's no question coming in, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you for presenting, Christian. And we'd love to see you back tomorrow for a talk by Jan Kunter from Suburb Media about creating beautiful Confluence pages with Aura. So thanks again for tuning in, everyone. Have a wonderful rest of the day. Take care and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.